Good evening and welcome to the August 10th, 2016 meeting of the Milton School Committee. As is our tradition, please join me in pledge allegiance to our flag and our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this could be a relatively short meeting. We've got a very important presentation from Vibu, our district data specialist, but I have a couple of things to remove from the agenda. And that's actually good for me because tomorrow is my 37th wedding anniversary.
Oh, yay.
And I didn't have time to get a card yet.
Oh, gee.
So, yeah, well, she never watches.
Oh,
She
okay.
never watches.
She's watching tonight.
Right.
Congratulations. It's her.
So we'll see how it goes. So for removal, we are going to remove new positions under the chair's report, and we are going to remove the policy subcommittee report. And we actually already approved the May 25th, 2016 and June 8th, 2016 minutes, so we're going to remove those.
So moved.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
So we had executive session on for tonight, and it was taken off because Dr. Donahue couldn't be here. So I wanted to propose, instead of having a proposal to do executive session tonight, the next meeting we have is the school retreat. And I was going to make a motion that we put executive session on at the end of that as August 24th. There's a chance I may not be here, and I heard from one other member there's a chance they may not be here. But I know we all committed to being here in August 22nd is the retreat. So I'm moving that we have executive session at the end of the retreat on August 22nd.
Second.
I'll second that. Yeah.
I just seconded it.
Oh, second.
Moved by Bagley-Jones, seconded by Walker. Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Can I just have one question with regard to the, I don't know if this is the proper place, but the August 22nd retreat. Do we have when will we have a start time on that? I just need to know.
4 to 8.
Is it definitely 4?
Yeah.
All right, that's what I thought, but I've been asking as central and, okay, so definitely 4. Thank you.
4 to 8.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So it
Great.
could go a little longer now.
That's
probably 4
fine.
to
I
9,
the
but-
start time just for work. I just wanted to know. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. I don't think we have anyone for citizen speak, so the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. As chairman, first, let us address the school committee calendar. We realize this calendar is important to parents and guardians as they make their vacation plans and their plans for next summer. This, I promise, will be the last revision. We had an issue this summer that came up at the elementary level. We're moving to tri-semester report cards. And so the leadership team asked, and I went to the union, and they agreed, if the elementary parents might have their parent-teacher conferences in December during what would have been the early release day. And in December, 6 through 12 will have professional development, but elementary will have the report cards meetings after school and evening. And then middle and high will remain in November for their report cards, the traditional 4 semesters, 4 quarters. And the afternoon of the 17th of November will be professional development for elementary school-aged children. So we'll articulate that in the blast and in front of the web. The union agreed, and I'm just asking the school committee, you vote this school calendar to re-vote it with that one edit, and I promise this will be the last time I'll bring the school calendar to you.
So move to approve the 2016-2017 school calendar as revised.
Second.
August 2016.
Sorry.
Can I ask one question on it? So, Superintendent Jim, just so I'm following that you're doing the trimester report cards, but explain to me again, so you said in November, though, it does say K-12 early release, professional day, so you're going to still use that day as a professional day?
Half day for,
Half professional day for 1-5, and then the conferences for 6-12 will go then. I see. Okay, and then in December, get grades on the 7th, grades 6 through 12. It says
it's a half day for, and it'll have PD.
okay for the 6-12 teachers, and then the conferences for the 1-5. So that you're flip flopping it. That okay? Just one clarification. Okay. All right,
And
then
we'll articulate that both visually and in script for parents and guardians.
Okay.
So motion moved by Walker, seconded by Craighead. Any more discussion on the motion? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. Next, as Chairman Walker mentioned, I believe, Chairman Walker, for the last 3 years, this has been a outstanding work in action initiated by Chairman Walker, an end-of-the-year data report. And now I would like us to welcome and have join us at the table, Milton Public Schools Data Specialist, Vivu, joined us 2 years ago. 2 years ago,
Oh, no, just last
Well,
year.
last year? 5 years ago? And I said to school committee members, no pressure, V, that when Vivu leaves meetings, all the administrators clap. And so the expertise in data collection and analysis that you have brought to the Milton Public Schools through the Advancement Initiative, funding your position. And again, teachers are familiar working with you and how you've brought the data right into the classroom. Teachers, I want to publicly recognize you and thank you. There is no request for data that V doesn't immediately respond to. I'll share that with our school committee as we go ahead, and they have requests. So I know, working with Chairman Walker and the staff in the Milton Public Schools, you've put a lot of time and effort into this end-of-the-year district presentation that you then use at the retreat.
Yeah, so for our new members, this report will be one of the bases that we'll use for our end-of-the-year review and insights about what we might be focusing on as priorities for district goals going forward. So look at it from two perspectives. One is obviously the richness of the data, but also whether there are one or two or three follow-up questions you might have, that information that might also be useful for the retreat that we can ask Ms. Vu to get to us before then. I would only add that, V, since you've joined us, the discussion of data has taken on a coherence and a depth that we didn't have before. So you've been a welcome addition, and we look forward, I certainly look forward to this discussion every year.
And V, just before we turn it over to you, I want to let you know that the principal's central office, we keep this in our top drawer. And so what you've compiled is data that we have to go to 50 different sources for, and you have brought it all into one place. So, and I think it'll be valuable for the viewing audience tonight, too.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Is anybody taking minutes?
I'm keeping track of the votes.
And Maura Downs watches the video, the show.
Okay.
She'll watch it and take minutes from the video.
Impressive, okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll get started tonight. So first of all, good evening. I just wanted to welcome the two new school committee members. And I know that this is going to be your first look at this data. So for your benefit and for the benefit of the viewing audience at home, if there are questions as we go along to help clarify some of the slides, please don't hesitate to ask me, because it is going to be a rather long presentation, so I'd rather take questions as we go along, because if we wait until the end, it's just going to be a lot of stuff. So don't mind stopping me if you have questions that need to be clarified. So I'll get started. The agenda for tonight, so the first part of the presentation will really be focused on the demographic profile of our school system. And then we'll be looking at some particular topics of interest that the superintendent, that school committee members, other people have brought up to me in the past. So we're going to be looking at college matriculation, at athletic, at early literacy, and this year we have some preschool data that we can share with you. So that's exciting. And then after that, we'll be taking a look at the standardized assessments, the MCAS and the PARC, that all districts in the state have completed up to school year 14-15. So I want to note that these results are not for the immediate school year that just ended, because those results won't be released publicly until the fall. So this is for the previous year. So all demographic data for our district dashboards are drawn from our student information system. And the reason that I go to the same system year after year is for consistency of data. And even though we think that, data kind of stay stable year after year, what I've been finding out is, sometimes there are changes that we need to make to the data. Sometimes, people categorize themselves as a particular subgroup or a particular race, and then there's a typo in the system or something. So there are always changes sometimes that we need to go back and fix the data. So sometimes the numbers can be 1 or 2 or 3 off. So as I mentioned earlier, the presentation is in the same format as last year for consistency's sake. So my goal is really to provide a way of looking at data consistently year after year so that we're tracking the same thing and we're all looking at the same thing and it's all coming from the same sources. Where possible, there are 5 years of data, and the reason for that is, in looking at data, what's most important is you look at the pattern and you look at the trend. So if you're just looking at one year's worth of results, achievement scores, it doesn't really mean anything. You really have to contextualize it in, what's been happening the past several years. So I really try to get at least 5 years of data in there so that you guys can see the trend. And then the last point is there's been really no big changes in the Milton Public Schools demographic profile, as you'll see, but you'll just see that the enrollment numbers have increased. So we'll get started. So on this slide, I just list out the number and percentage of enrollment in our school system per grade level for every year for the past 5 years. And as you can see, there are currently 4,132 students enrolled in the school year that just ended. And this is about a 230 students increase over 5 years ago, 2011 to 2012. So our numbers are increasing. And most of that increase, you'll see, is coming from the elementary school. So right here, you see it keeps going up here. Peers, you kind of see it's pretty stable. Middle school and high school are pretty stable, but the elementary schools, the numbers are increasing. So in this slide, I broke down the enrollment number by school. So you can see that the increase is really across all the elementary school, and it's not focused on just any one school in particular. So you see this increase going up. Okay. So the next slide, this is looking at special education in the district. And on the top left hand here are the total district numbers. So you can see that for the past 5 years, our numbers have gone from 16% down to 14% of students who are in special education, who are 6 to 21. So the green are the 3 to 5, and the orange is the 6 to 21 age range. And down at the bottom, you see the breakdown by the different schools as well. And one thing that I did want to say about this is our 14% number is actually a little bit lower than the state. The state number is at 17%. But 14% is pretty much on par with what the numbers are nationwide. So nationwide is about 13-14%. Yes?
And that includes just IEPs, no 504s?
Yes, just IEPs, correct.
And is that how the state collects it as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this slide is looking at the profile of English language learners in our school system. And this year we are at 2%, which is about 65 students. And then you can kind of see their distribution across the different, the elementary school, middle school, and high school, and how it has changed in the past 5 years. So there's really not much difference in the past 5 years. So on this next slide, we're looking at low-income data. So again, top left, you kind of see the trend over the past 5 years, and this year we're at 14%. And down here, you see, again, the breakdown by the different schools. In this note here, what I said was, at DESE, last year, they made a change from using low income to economically disadvantaged. So in all the MCAS and PARC data, you won't see low income anymore, you'll just see economically disadvantaged. In our school system, we still collect low income data because this is what our food services department use to identify free and reduced lunch services and to report it to the federal state. So we still have that data, but it's not equivalent to the state economically disadvantaged category. Yes.
I remember you spoke to this last time, but can you just speak to, especially for the viewing audience too, you know, what is the difference between low income and economically disadvantaged?
Okay. So economically disadvantaged is actually a smaller subset of low income. Economically disadvantaged is very specific, and the state draws it from other state databases. So only families of students who are receiving SNAP assistance, which is the supplemental nutrition assistance, the TAF, DC transitional assistance, if families are in DCF care, or the last category is if they're on in the Mass Health system, in the Mass Health database, then they're considered economically disadvantaged. Low income is an application that families in Milton have to fill out, and I guess they have to submit certain proof of income requirement, and whereby if they meet certain threshold, then they can receive free or reduced lunch. So it's a bigger group than just economically disadvantaged.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
That's great.
The economically, I got SNAP, DCF, and what was the third one?
Mass Health.
DCF.
Thank you.
Yes.
So when, am I in?
Yeah.
So when we report out our PARC and MCAS data, it's really now going to be apples to oranges when we're comparing that subgroup.
Right, it's going to be a little bit different. The numbers are, from what I've seen last year, the numbers are still similar. It's not too different, but you never know because, you know, one year we might have a lot of students who apply to be low income and qualify for that designation in our district, but they won't necessarily meet the state's requirement to be economically disadvantaged.
I have another question, and this might be for Superintendent Gormley. So in speaking to qualifying for low income, so maybe Vee just mentioned it, is there a state mandate of what low income is, or is it go by district by district? I wanted to...
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Could I have Dr. Pavlicek explain? I think you'll find it very interesting, the process for free and reduced lunch.
Okay.
It's actually federal threshold.
Oh, it is federal,
Because
okay.
this free and reduced is a federal program.
Okay.
And so there's an application you fill out, and the federal government just has you collect them, and they audit a certain percentage every year and so forth, but you're supposed to provide certain documentation. But the thresholds are based on family size income, and they're all federal designation.
Okay.
And I want to say that our food service director, Jackie Morgan, does a phenomenal job reaching out to families in multiple ways all through the year to communicate with them that at any time that they need to apply to the free and reduced lunch program, they're encouraged. And the program is kept totally confidential. So during my career, now when you buy your lunch at Milton High School, you have a swipe card, and nobody knows that I'm on free and reduced lunch. So Jackie reaches out through community groups, posters in churches and food pantries, communicating through newsletters. She accepts applications all through the year. It's all confidential, and we don't want any family who qualifies for free to reduced lunch to ever not be able to access that system. But I wanted to ask, for the advanced placement tests, they've used the free and reduced criteria, again, nationwide, to adjust those fees. Will they be using the new socially disadvantaged or the free and reduced? What do you
I
think?
think they're using free and reduced still because it's a national program.
Yeah.
They would be using a national metric.
Ask a question.
Is that right?
Just as, you may not have an answer to this, but do you know the reasoning for the change in the why you would reduce that subset?
Yeah, the reason is because some districts actually are doing away with collecting low-income data altogether because they have such a high percentage of students in their district who qualify for that program. So for example, in Boston, they don't collect that data anymore because everyone is now eligible to receive free lunch at school. And the reason that they are doing away with that is because of all the paperwork and bureaucracy that it takes to collect all this data when such a high percentage of their student population is going to be eligible for it anyways. So they're basically cutting out all the back paperwork that we would have to, that we're doing actually.
So they're trying to still assess how income affects, learning through that, but doing so in a smaller subset to reduce the amount of
Exactly.
paperwork. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Pavlicek has anything else to add to that, but that's
No,
the basic gist.
it became, the issue was how they could collect the data. They couldn't collect free and reduced data if major cities like Boston, Lawrence, others weren't collecting it. So they just went to whatever databases they had, TAF, DCF.
So some of those students, though, they don't receive all of those, so you have to meet all those criteria in order to be considered
No, anyone.
No, just any one of them.
any one of those.
Any one of them.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you.
Right. So I will go on. So this slide gives us the breakdown of the racial demographic in the Milton Public Schools. And here we see that over the past 5 years, our numbers of minority students in the district are stable at 30%. And when you look down here at the different schools, it's a little bit of a different story. So Collicott here, you see that it's around 15% who are students of color. At the Cunningham, you see it's around, I would say around 20%. Glover School, 22, 21, around 20% as well. But Tucker, you see that over the years, it has only increased its population of student of color. So going from 54% to 61% now. At the middle school and at the high school, so you see the conversion of all the different elementary schools at the middle school. So then you see the numbers go up to 31% and even higher at the high school, 30, 38, 37%. So this gives you a breakdown of the different racial group in the school system. So African American students are about 16% of the total student population. Asian, composed of about 6%, Hispanic or Latino, 4%, and then other, so anyone who checked the other box, including multiracial students, are in that 4% as well, and then white student makes up the majority of our population, 70%. And this demographic really hasn't changed at all in the past, I would even say, going back 10 years. I only have 5 years of data up here, but when I look back, I mean, it's very similar. And then on this side, I have race and low income. So what this means is 46% of African American Black students in our district are low income versus 20% of Asian students are low income versus 36% of Hispanic or Latino students, 20% of the other category are low income, and then only 4% of our white student population are low income.
And if I might, Chairman Walker, when we deal with these Park and MCAS data, and we identify subgroups, and we have used our advancement money, funds, valuable budget dollars for after-school sessions, vacations, summer sessions, often we find what V mentioned, identification errors, but this identification is by the parents or guardians when families register in the school district. And so if there are the mistakes or any questions about the data, again, parents and guardians do the identification on behalf of their children.
And then down here, you can kind of see the breakdown of the different racial grouping at all our schools. Move on. So this dashboard is helping us to look at the French immersion program. District-wide, these are the percentages for the elementary school. About 43% of our students are in French immersion. And this is a decrease from, what it used to be in 2012-13 at 53%. So I think this is good news. Then you can look down at the different elementary schools down here to see the breakdown more.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do you measure the French immersion at the Milton High School? Since really it's a program that runs K to 8, is not correct? So how are you measuring that at the high school? K to 5. I mean, so how do you measure that? Are you looking at statistically those students that you know have been in it since the first grade?
These are all the students who, in the database, have been in French immersion.
There's a flag in the database for French immersion. When you move into 6th grade, even though French immersion takes a different format in the middle school, the flag is still checked in French immersion. So the high school students who are marked as French immersion were in the French immersion program in the elementary schools and have remained in the system and are still at the high school.
And if you leave elementary school and move to a different program at Pierce, the flag goes away? Like you take Latin instead?
I believe it still lists you. I believe it's listed by your status in the elementary school.
Okay.
But that's a good follow-up question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Varela?
Yeah, I would like to follow up on that too, because I do know there's a lot of French immersion students that might even continue through middle school, but then in high school, they might choose to go into, Spanish or Latin, or even do 2 years of French and then switch over to Spanish or whatever. So I was just wondering if, and those students that are in the French, correct me if I'm wrong, but if those students that stay in the French immersion track through high school, they're taking French and then they take the certification French test that they're a native speaker. That to me is still you're in the French immersion program through high school, but I wouldn't say that you're in it, if you were in it through 8th grade, but then you take Spanish or Latin or whatever in high school. So just interesting,
No, this is actually a good question because, as you know, I've only been here with the district for a year, so I'm not fully familiar with the French immersion program yet. So this is actually a really good question that I'm going to follow up on with our World Languages Director and see if we can clarify what the high school French immersion designation really mean.
Because I would definitely say Madame Fisher would be able to break out a group, because there definitely is, kids that I would say qualify that they've fully gone through the entire immersion program to be a certified speaker, but other than that, Because there's kids who transfer in and can still take French 1 or 2 that say they came from another district and moved here, or whatever,
Right.
so, and that, they wouldn't be a French immersion student, but they'd be in French, but.
Right.
Dr. Pavlicek?
The French immersion flag in the database is set at the elementary level by the elementary secretaries, whether they're in French or the English Innovation Pathways program. I don't believe that in the middle school or high school they ever touch the flag. So I think it's at middle school and high school, it's more historical than the sign of any active participation in any program at the middle school or high school, because you, at the high school, for instance, you could take some French courses and not others, and you might not be, fully taking advantage of the options.
Right.
So I don't believe I don't believe at the middle school or high school it's actually tracked at all. I think it's just a historical record of where they were in elementary school.
So if that's, Ms. Bagley Jones?
Well, so my question would be is, I'm not sure why that initially happened, the flagging, and is there a point to it from your research? Like, what do we do with that data? We're collecting it, we're flagging it somehow, but then are we looking at that data in a different way?
Yeah, I believe that actually a previous researcher, Dr. Laura O'Dwyer, has done extensive research into the French immersion program, and this data is actually how she's able to do the research because
Because of the flag?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But her data was focused on the elementary grades. So the question is whether, two questions. One is whether the middle school and high school data is good data.
Yeah.
And second,
That's a good question.
If not, do we even want to track that for the
Right.
purposes of this data element?
Right, yeah.
I think that's a good
I
question.
mean, I guess I have a question, maybe again for the superintendents, but, I mean, do you think the reason why you've kept it flagged or not changed the flagging is maybe to assess the journey of those students that were in the French immersion program versus people who now that would now finish the innovation pathway? I mean, I don't know, is it, where they're tracking and how well they're doing, or I'm just wondering.
Well, it's interesting what Chairman Walker said, because Dr. Laura Dwyer has secured funding, which nobody's ever come in and evaluated our middle and high school French immersion program, and that's what she's going to do. And so the questions that I have about this tracking is, we have to check whether students are, if it's the original, like Dr. Pavlicek said, retention, if somebody wanted to study retention, she's going to look at achievement, she's going to look at program options, she's putting together a proposal. So I think as a follow-up question, we'll check the tracking, we'll see if anybody ever has analyzed it or used it, but I would say at this time that with Dr. O'Dwyer coming in, it would be valuable as a school district if someone now wanted to expand beyond the elementary school and look at the French immersion program, middle and high school, and career plans.
I actually think the flagging is a great idea. If it's accurately measured over time,
Right.
it's a wonderful way to track that program and to assess how those students stay in the program. And if you're a data person, looking at the choices they make in high school. And then if you were really doing like longitudinal, looking beyond that, I mean, that would be so cool to look beyond and how it influences their learning beyond high school. I mean, it's a great system. I just think, because, that piece always stands out for me, that it ends at a certain point. But if it doesn't, then keeping track of that would be important.
I would just say it is possible to do both, because once you get middle school and high school, there are other features about what courses you are taking and so forth that are in the database that would allow you to track who's active in a French immersion program versus this particular flag, which, as I say, tracks the historical record of where you were in elementary school.
Yeah, and you can track how you move through the program and stuff. It's a great thought.
Yeah.
Not to follow
Ms. Bagley Jones?
down this path, but I do know we talked a while ago about how do we track when kids leave the French immersion program before grade 5 and why? So, isn't that what this could be used for?
Yes. Yes, and we can do a presentation on that. When Member Eberhardt was speaking, we have families who move into the district who come from French-speaking countries, and they have entrance exams with Dr. Fisher. 2 children had an entrance exam yesterday. And so it's very interesting there's a perception out there that students drop out of the French immersion program. They don't, I can tell you, the children at the elementary don't drop out. We have somebody coming in now, and, it's pretty, people doing the placement it's pretty consistent across the district, and we know where the open seats are after first grade, and there aren't a large number. But for a future meeting, if the chairman ever wanted us to do a presentation on the attrition in the French immersion, we could.
I think my question was a little different than that. I'm curious for the few kids or the number, what is the actual number of dropout? It might be one, but I don't know what it is, right?
Well, that's what I could get you, an
Exactly.
attrition
And then why?
It was one this year,
It was one
across all 4 schools.
across all 4 schools.
This
Okay. But I mean, it would be interesting to keep knowing that as we go
I
forward.
do. I know
You
it.
do. You know it, okay. I should have known.
I can let you know.
Just chart.
Yeah. So, I mean, in light of all these really good questions about this data, I think I'm gonna really skip this next slide because it might not be representative of what I thought the data was. So, let's skip it.
I just have one more question, sorry. I was just curious as to why, and you looked at the demographics for French immersion, you didn't look at gender.
It was just something I missed, and nobody asked about it. So now that you asked about it,
Laura
I can put it
O'Dwyer
in there.
did it, so you don't have to recreate it. Laura O'Dwyer did it, so we can answer that question too.
Thank you for that good, honest answer.
You know, in working with all this data, I look
It's a
at
lot.
so much data
Right,
across
right.
the entire district at every school. So
Right.
if someone doesn't raise the question or the flag to me, I might just not
right.
even think about it.
Right.
So thank you for that. So this particular graph, we're looking at the race and staff data in the district. So the percentages of teachers who are non-white have increased a little bit over the past several years from 6-7% to 9% now. And then you can see down here the breakdown at the different schools as well.
So it looks like almost all of that increase was at the Tucker.
So 15. No, not necessarily.
If you look at the
Well, it
number.
goes from 14 to 15 to 17 to 26 to 25, so
Yeah, I was looking at this number,
the
yeah.
others are reasonably consistent within a point.
Well, there's also been an increase here.
Yeah.
Of a few teachers at the Cunningham.
That's an area where we still have a lot of work to do, I think.
So we've gone from about 7% to 9%? Okay.
And the staff data here, I have a note here. These are all staff people who are required to be reported to the state. So these include teachers, aides, administrators, administrative assistants, and any central office staff. So they don't include food services, janitorial, athletic staffs. Okay, so here is staff and gender. So as
So V, on the, go back to the previous
on
slide.
the other slide.
I thought last time you had a slide where you broke out teaching staff and non-teaching staff. Do you have that slide this time?
I do not have that slide.
Because obviously, overall staff demographics and diversity is important, but arguably the direct instruction staff are the ones
Right.
where you have the most impact, I think. So I think, particularly for the retreat, I'd like to see non-teaching staff broken out from non-teaching staff.
Sure. I will get you that slide in the follow-up to this.
Okay?
And the other thing that I wanted to say about this race and staff question is, you know, at the state level, the percentage is very similar to what we have here at Milton as well. It's 91% teachers who are white, and then 9% who are non-white. So we're not totally off, and I know that nationally this is an issue as well that the nation is working on.
So it's an issue within the Milton Public Schools that every time we have a opportunity to hire a teacher or any staff member within the Milton Public Schools, we look to diversify our staff at every level and in every classroom.
So class and gender. The numbers the percentages are pretty much still the same. 18%, 17% of our staff are male versus 83% who are female. So, I mean, this speaks to your point too, Chairman Walker, that this is not broken down by teaching versus non-teaching either, so we don't know where it is. But overall, the gender also reflects what's happening at the state level as well. So down here, you see elementary schools. The percentages are not too high. When you get to peers, it gets better, around 25%, and then the high school have the most male teachers or male staff members in the whole district, 35%. All right, so I'm going to move on topics of interest. Now I want to talk a little bit about college matriculation. So if you look at the data down here, it's broken down by the most recent year, the most recent cohort, and where the type of beyond high school opportunities that they're involved in. So 4 years colleges, 2-year colleges, military, technical or trade school, employment, and other. And then we have a category that we just are not sure what they're doing. I think in the other category are like post-high school,
Gap years.
like gap year schools, prep schools for college. So if we see up here, 83% of our students are going to 4-year colleges, and 8% are going to 2-year colleges. So that's 91% of our graduating class going to college. And this number is very similar to last year. Last year was at 92%.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
So, again, as you did with the others, compared to the state in their rates, do you know?
I don't know if we have this kind of information at the state level. I mean, this is very, like, the breakdown, like that. I'll look. Yeah,
I just
remember
don't know.
seeing it.
And Superintendent Gormley, you would know this in terms of past years. Where are we with the 91% or the 92% last year?
We're within, we range from 90 to 94%
Okay,
in recent history.
okay, thank you.
Sylvie, it's a relatively small number, but I understand all the categories except unknown. Well, why wouldn't we know?
Unknown are students that just have not indicated to our guidance department like what their plans are, what they're doing at all.
I see.
Yeah.
And they've refined as the parents and guardians of children at the high school understand with this Naviance, this is not just asking the 6 of you what you're doing. This is a system, a tracking system that's online that all the families and students communicate, right, Ms. Everett?
Yes,
And so if we have a tracking.
life consuming at some point.
So this is looking at the racial breakdown of all those students who are going to these different opportunities. So at the 4-year colleges, we have about 30% of our students who are minority students who will be going to college. And for the high school class, the percent of minority student is 34%. So we're about there. So looking at the low-income population of our graduating class, we have about 13% of students going to four-year colleges are low income, and the low-income population of our entire graduating class is about 16%. So I remember last year's statistic were pretty similar too.
Ask a question.
Dr. Craig?
I see that this is the last of the breakdowns in terms of going to college. Oh, it's not. Gender is. I can ask at the end. But I don't see a breakdown for students on IEPs. Would it be possible to get that before our retreat as well?
Students, I can try, yeah.
And if I might, Chairman Walker, Dr. Craig, you had a question after the SPED study, and our special ed director did a lot of investigation. So at the retreat, and if we answer these, whatever the chairman's pleasure is in public, she has an analysis that she was still working on to reply to you about that. And it was around children with special needs attending university, how long it took them to graduate.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, but I'll follow up and I'll check if we have those numbers as well.
And we'll do that
I'm
with
sure we
Tracy
do.
Grandow, too.
Okay, thank you.
So as you said, this is looking at gender, and we have 60% of our students who are going to four-year colleges are actually young women, and this is more than their share of their graduating class population. So their share of the population is only 53%. But the number of students going into four-year colleges are 60% are girls. So this trend is actually very reflective of the trend nationwide. A lot of girls, more girls are going to colleges these days than boys are.
It is a national trend, and I saw one body of research that said if four-year colleges strictly applied their admission requirements, they would admit almost all women.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's just an interesting observation, being the mother of three sons.
But don't worry, they figured out they can't do that, but
No, it's just an interesting observation as to why that, if you think about the why in life, then what is it
Well-
about education systems and the thought of the future that those are the choices, and what other things are playing into that?
well, as the father of two sons, I could give you a quick answer on that, but we should probably take that offline. But suffice it to say that the thought that girls mature more quickly than boys is probably true.
Some truth.
And so, just one additional note that I mentioned to a school committee member today, in that email blast that you read or didn't read, when I noted the AP scholars, it was Maura Downs brought to my attention that the AP scholars at Milton High School this past year, that would be who have attained at least four, ranking the 3, 4, or 5 on at least 4 exams, 5 young men.
There you go.
And so historically, she's looked at it and was very surprised.
Do we know anyone whose child is on that list?
Well, we know somebody who's on one of the lists that we're going to discuss
I
during
won't-
happenings.
Never mind, never mind. Embarrassing someone.
It's never hard.
Anyway, it's just interesting. I always think about that for the way different genders learn and opportunities.
All right, so I'll move on. So we're moving on to a different topic, athletics.
Okay.
Right.
This Dave, if you want that.
So this top chart up here is looking at the breakdown of the high school, the total high school population by different racial group. And down here are all the breakdown of all students who participated in our sports program this past year, broken down by race as well. And you can kind of see there are some parallel, and the goal is really to get the population participating in sports to kind of mirror the total high school population. So that's the goal. And here you see, white students are participating, more white students are participating in sports than any other group, because their share of the population is only 63%, but they're participating at 71%. And then we see the group that has the biggest gap in participation are the African American students, where their share of the population is 23%, and they're only participating at 16%.
Wait a minute, I lost you there. Oh, Glenn. 23%, where's the, oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You see it? Okay. And overall, we have 54% of our high school students play sports this past year, and that is down from 65% overall who participated last year.
So, if I might, majority of this data is unbelievable, and it's a compliment to the students who do the work and the teachers who teach them. To me, this was a very troubling slide when we went over this presentation. And so to me, this slide is an indictment of fees. Because we have more options, and this just shows the impact of fees. We could do a lot of research and we could find out, but I can tell you as your superintendent, this is a reflection of families having to pay, even with the free and reduced. As your superintendent said, there aren't many 17-year-olds who will raise their hand and say, I'm poor. And we have families who will do free and reduced for lunch for their elementary school children, and we track them, and the high school children won't identify as free and reduced, which would enable them to participate in a club for free. We do a tremendous amount of outreach. I would tell you that we've shared with you the calculus and the bridge programs where we identify children at risk. We understand the correlation to participating in a sport or a club to success in school. And so if you keep up the commitment in bridge and calculus for the extra support, we have those children enroll in athletics with no fee. And so this was very, very startling to me, this slide.
Ms. Varela?
So can I ask, because I know, Superintendent Gormley, that what you said, that nobody, no student wants to say I'm on free and reduced lunch, and that kind of thing. And no, a high school student wants to walk into the AD's office and say, we can't afford to play blah, blah, blah. So what action steps are, just like you said, Jackie Morgan does the best to reach out and identify and let people know, that at any time they can sign up for free and reduced lunch. What, I know that there's a new AD coming in, but what action steps can be taken to do that kind of outreach to the parents? I don't know, to then reach out to the AD's office to say, my son, my daughter wants to play, lacrosse or football or whatever, but we're free and reduced in signing them up. Do you think if there's, and I know staff, it's a big, the office is not, there's not a direct administrative assistant there. It's always, that it's not a heavily staffed area, but, I think that if more people knew they could do it and didn't have to self-identify, then, they can just sign up, kind of like the same thing, like you just mentioned, under the radar, that everyone goes through the lunch line and swipes the card and nobody knows who's a free and reduced and who's, parents are paying monthly for it, but.
Well, it's interesting. So as a follow-up, that would rise to the top of mind. So I said, when we identify children, we give them the option. And so we've been going constant around that 65, if we look at for the next presentation. But when we were doing the interviews for the athletic directors, in other school districts, it's about 70%. In school districts that you want to compare yourselves to, and higher. So I was, when it was 65, and, but, so this really merits when we went over this in preparation for today, the value of you asking for this, is that we'll put together with the principal a task force. And again, communicating with parents, reaching out. I would tell you that to use our facility, we gave the crew organization gave us free seats in crew, and we recruited 8th graders to the town crew, so they then would, when they get to the high school. So I think if we sat with our new athletic director and Principal Jett, and we came up with a group of parents, a group of teachers together to come up with a plan so that we do not see these numbers ever again. In fact, we see these numbers increase.
Because can I ask, again, I'm sorry, it's a follow-up, but with Jackie Morgan's intel, I mean, I'm sure that she must share that with the AD and, you know, I mean, could letters go out to those families, just like they would, you know, FYIing them that maybe they're eligible for that, so, you know, I don't.
And I think at the high school level,
If
just
there
as I
is,
look at you and think
yeah.
about your own children, I think that working with James Jett, looking at these numbers, I think it's going to be personal outreach
Right.
and encouragement when it gets to be high
Okay.
school children
Right.
Yeah,
and
whatever.
students. I think that it's going to be on the responsibility of the coaches, the teachers, the guidance counselors. And again, when you get into this data, and you can look at the actual teams and then follow up with the actual coaches.
That'd be great, yeah.
And then they want to talk to you about cut lists, and when you get cut, another sport you go on. But we have sports like the football and the track that don't make cuts.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
I think that as we look at this for our retreat, that this would be a really big action step for us, along with many other things. But I'm also reminding myself and others that, you know, the AD position has had some responsibilities taken away in terms of the PE position being separate. So in my mind, this is a great time for the AD coming in to be able to say, okay, part of what you're doing is mentoring, reaching out, doing what you need to do to get the kids. I mean, that was my thought when we split the positions, of that would be something that would happen. So looking at this is a good time to work on this one.
Ms. Eberhard?
I think that Superintendent Gormley is right, that we have to look at the fees and how that intersects with this, but there's also features of why you don't choose to do sports that have to do with income level and after-school responsibilities and
Right.
family responsibilities. And so the intersection of the data with low income versus race versus choice of doing something after school is also a factor in this, that you can outreach to families as much as we want to, and we should do that. I mean, you know, after my father died, we as a family were eligible for free and reduced lunch, and you think about those things, but there are other things that play into that, right? That you have other responsibilities after school. And how you balance all that out. I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce fees, and if we had no fees, that would be wonderful. I'm just saying that this is a multi-level,
But that's a flag.
you know. No, of course it
65
is,
to 50.
absolutely. But there are other factors that play into it as well, I think, that are also things to consider.
That we have less control over.
Right.
We have less control over those
But-
things, right?
And then you very eloquently noted what those are. And then when we talk about this, people will always bring up the feeder programs.
Right, right.
So as a former survey researcher, I would just offer that this is a multifaceted problem, and that I would argue that the data that we have presently does not suggest that this is solely a fee problem.
For me, it's always a fee program.
Well,
As a superintendent of a
I understand
public
that, I understand the
school, fees are a
pitch,
problem.
and philosophically, I think we're all with you.
Right.
But I would say that
Red flag.
simply lowering the fees may or may not solve this problem. As Ms. Eberhard has pointed out, there's other responsibilities. And then we have the issue, if you look at participation by sport, there are some sports where the participation is very, very low. And we might ask ourselves, what is the reason for that? So,
So why
yeah,
don't we move on to that slide and we can start looking at participation by sports. So, these are all the fall sports. And you can kind of see the highlighted sports, the one in yellow, are those sports that have 30% or more diversity on their team. So those sports are cheerleading, football, soccer, for boys, not soccer for girls, and volleyball. And these are the same four sports that are diverse from last year's data as well.
Have they changed at all from last year?
In the winter time, I think we added a new sport, swim, and that sport is
Okay,
diverse.
but for the fall, it hasn't.
But not for the fall, it hasn't. So then this begs the question of that, what you were talking about, feeder pattern and where students are choosing to join, which sports they're choosing to join and why.
And then when we started to examine the data, the fall off, no pun intended, in the winter and spring, where in the fall it's higher enrollment. So there are, as Chairman Walker said, and Member Everhart, a lot of avenues to look at.
Can I ask a question before we go on to the next page? Golf, we say co-ed, but are there actually any girls on it? I think at one point there was one.
It was,
Really?
but
I think it's meant to be a co-ed sports, and so that's why they put that in the system as a co-ed, but
Oh, yeah, no, it
If
has
that-
to be co-ed or offer a separate team, but I'm
Right.
just saying, in terms of demographics, are there any girls on the golf team? So basically, it's a boys' sport.
I think there was one last
Yeah,
year.
there was one, I knew her, but that's why I think there's only one. So,
Yeah.
anyway, just something
Yeah.
to think about.
Can I know,
Do whatever you
Chairman,
want.
yeah, Chairman
Yeah.
Walker's not here. But
You're
no,
in charge.
Oh,
by
I'm
the-
in charge.
You're the senior member.
senior member.
Dismissed. No offense.
none taken. I'm happy to
No,
go.
here's, I do want to speak to, I know Chairman Walker just said it's multifaceted, and I know Ms. Bagley Jones talked about, Ms. Eberhardt's piece, and then the whole, and also the feeder program as well, like, it's the exposure to the sports that are, what's available in the town, what's available at the middle school, all that.
What your parents can pay for.
Yeah, so all of that, definitely, plays into it, and I, as someone who came from Pierce PTO leadership, they are expanding, they're starting a soccer program, a club program this year, their basketball is doing well, their track is doing well, so I do think that makes a difference, and, the fee is a big part that we as a high school can do, and there's always the increase of exposure to sports at the middle school level, which, has always been, I know, feedback that I get from the parent community all the time. And it's also, as Ms. Gormley spoke to, that engagement, whether it's a club or a sport, that connection to your school, then makes its way over to the overall success in your academics. So, there's definitely things we can do, but it's and I do think things like, I know that, like the Milton Junior Wildcats, the other programs are trying to reach out to all elementary schools and having information nights. So, there's this outreach with which I think we already have a good relationship with. Even the Pierce soccer program, I know, is being supported and done jointly with the Milton soccer, town soccer, and clubs, the travel soccer is supporting that and doing that. So there are efforts underway, so hopefully that will help improvement. But I do think that needs to increase, and I do think, the outreach, like you say, and maybe under the new AD about the fee situation could hopefully bring those numbers up. It's not like nothing's being done, but it needs to continue, I think.
All right, so just talked about the fall sports, so winter sports. I mentioned that swim is a new sport that was added, and wrestling became more, it wasn't as diverse last year, it was more diverse, it became more diverse this year. However, when you look at the number, last year there were like 31 students on the team, and this year they only have 20 students. So you kind of have to look both at the number of students who are participating, participation rate, as well as the diversity factor.
I'm sorry, which example did you just give? I lost.
Wrestling.
Wrestling, okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then in the spring season, the most diverse sports are outdoor track for boys and girls, rugby, and tennis for boys and girls.
Interesting.
And these are the same sports that were diverse last year as well. So I think I'll move on to the next topic. So this is early literacy, one of the things that we wanted to talk about. So raising early literacy achievement is one of the key advancement initiatives here in the Milton Public Schools. And as such, we have been collecting formative assessment data in grade 1, 2, and 3 to kind of help us track how our students are doing in reading. And the two assessments that we use are the F&P, the Fountas and Pinnell BAS for the English Innovation Program, and then in the French Immersion Program for grade 1 and 2, we use the GB+. And what I wanted to say about this was the F&P and the GB+ are just one measure of reading that helps teachers to collect information about their students and help to guide their instruction. These tests are not designed to predict performance on the MCAS or the PARCC. I know, a lot of time we want to be able to correlate, like this assessment, if they do well on it, they should be able to do well on the state exams as well. But unfortunately, that's not the case a lot of the time, because these tests are specific reading measure, and the PARCC is really comprehensive. It's asking you to do nonfiction, it's asking you to do critical thinking, applying all these comprehension skills, and you'll see a difference.
So these are out of order, excuse me, Vic, out of order? So the group might have to just look in their,
It's like 3 pages ahead.
Yeah, I just
found it.
flipped it.
Perfect.
Instead of talking about pre-K first, I wanted to talk about early literacy
Thank
first,
you.
then we'll go back to pre-K. So this is the results for the first grade F&P test. And as you can see from the fall administration, and so these are broken down by the different schools as well, Collicott, Cunningham, Glover, Tucker here. And then we have the grand total, that's kind of a district-wide number. So if you look at the F&P level in the fall for first grader, you see the blue are above benchmark, the green is at benchmark, yellow is 1 level below benchmark, and then any students in the red blocks are 2 or more levels below benchmarks. And so you can see in the fall, we have about 27% of our students across the 4 schools, the 4 elementary schools, the first grader, that are 2 or more level below benchmarks. And these students are the ones that we really try to move. We spend a lot of resources and time working with these students, setting them up with reading specialists and making sure that they're getting the support that they need to make progress. So by the spring administration for first grade, you can see that we've managed to reduce the number of students who are in the red. So those are reading 2 or more levels below what they should be reading at.
Ms. Varela?
Can I ask a question? So, because of the French immersion program, so the GB is kind of equivalent to the Fountas and Pinnell, like you spoke to. And I noticed, it says, grade 1. Do you think that, to me it seems high, but do you think because in grade 1, it's their first introduction to French, and they can't be reading as, I would assume they're not reading French as well as they would be reading English at the end of grade 1, because so many kids, not everyone, but a large portion of them, are being read to. They had kindergarten in English. So is this the stats at the end of grade is G1, is that what that's saying?
This isn't French immersion, this is the.
This is F&B,
the other
it's only
classes.
English.
Oh, I'm sorry, so, oh, it's really, oh, okay. I thought it was a combination, I apologize.
No.
So,
Uh,
wow.
Yeah, this
So
is
that's
just
large.
English.
Is that right?
That's, yeah.
So when you're looking at when you're talking about what you're assessing, you're talking about reading at the first grade in the fall, you're assessing their ability to read, to identify words, to put together sentences. This is not, like, some children don't read in the beginning of the first grade.
Right.
So those are the children that are in the red, is what you're telling me.
So
Janet
there
can
are certain skills that are developmentally appropriate for a first grader.
Right.
And the F&P will measure that. And so at the beginning of the year, they might not be reading, but there are other indication,
Right.
coding skills and whatnot,
Right.
phonics, that they should be able to perform, to achieve. And so that's what we're measuring. And so by the end of first grade, there's a progress
Right.
in what they should be doing. And those are the benchmark that we use.
Ms. Sheehan, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I would just say that these benchmarks have been developed in a way that they're standardized, so that students are compared to, the expectations are the same for all students taking the assessment. And just as V noted, they're developing skills, so the assessments are developmentally appropriate according to expectations during that time of year.
Yeah.
And what they're looking for is a particular level for instructional purposes. So these assessments are strictly for planning instruction. And students can be monitored according to their needs, and these can change. Even between the fall, winter, and end of year, some students can move along even in between, should a teacher decide to progress monitor a child that they might have concerns about.
And this may be an in-the-weeds question that has no function here, but so nonfiction in the first grade? Like, so, I'm just thinking about my own children, and one of them, two of them entered first grade not reading, and one of them did. So I'm just sort of curious, as an educator, what are you measuring there? I don't know. I don't quite get that comparison between fiction and nonfiction in first grade. I know what nonfiction is, but if you're just still decoding and you're still identifying words and you're still sort of learning that piece.
So reading programs now are presented from kindergarten through
From
fifth.
preschool, too.
Right. They are generally at least 50% nonfiction. That's the suggested goal, is to have children familiar with nonfiction text. And so they may be shown a nonfiction book with pictures and perhaps some words to decode. And it would be around what we call concepts of print.
Okay.
Can a student make inferences from the pictures?
Okay.
Are they able to draw conclusions
Okay.
based on more or less
Using the text or
developmental
material,
level?
too, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. to me. All right, thank you.
Can I also ask, how long has the district used Fountas and Pinnell for this? Do you know, give or take?
I think this is I think we're starting our fourth year.
Right, with the advancement initiative.
Right. Okay.
And I'm sure the curriculum coordinators have the data collected in different formats prior to my being in this role. So I'm not sure how that data was collected or where it's stored or where all of that is. So I only have this year's data starting from the year that just ended, and we'll be doing the same collection next year. So you will kind of be able to see the data in the same format from year to year.
So, and if I might, the value of this data with the advancement initiative is that John Phelan before, Janet Sheehan, and Janet Sheehan, since she's been here, we meet with every principal, and we go over the data at every grade level, especially the first and second grade, to a child's name. And we go over it 3 times a year, and to every child, how many levels have they moved up? And if they're plateaued, should they be identified as a child with special needs? Are they making progress? What are their needs? So this assessment data we can go, we can get data from the teachers, but this hard data has been invaluable when you talk about the old No Child Left Behind, that every child came on the radar when we sit down with the principals. And you should know that you have principals in these schools who know every child and the needs of every child. And, you know, we'll go back to a school and say, will you follow up on these particular children?
Question before you go on?
Oh, sure.
So on this page, you're saying this is not your data, but what the teachers did for assessments. Is that what you said?
Yes, I mean, what I did was I set up a form so that teachers can enter data directly into that form
Okay.
in a consistent way across all the
Okay.
schools so that we can pull the same data together at the end.
Because it just seems to me like there's just such an incredible improvement
Yeah.
between the fiction, skip that nonfiction thing in the middle, and the last section of it. I mean, it's pretty remarkable in terms
Yeah.
of looking at the red.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts about why that is, or are you just reporting the data? Or is that something different?
I tell you that this advancement initiative, we use this data to actually assign reading specialists. And so when we
Interesting.
go, we'll say, you know, Ms. Gormley's class needed that reading specialist, and look at the improvement of data. Now, you don't want to remove the reading specialist and have the data
Right.
regress, but we actually have taken our French and English reading specialists and placed them where the need is. And we know how long the reading specialists
Yeah.
have to be there. Now, there's not a lot of movement.
Yeah.
This isn't, you know, this is building on skills and building on skills. So this kind of data, and it's really fascinating with the advancement. I won't keep going on this, but they call it a blitz. And so they'll go into a school and they'll say, oh, Mary, we can't have a meeting today because we're blitzing. And so everybody at 1 and 2, right, V? Everybody, all the reading specialists, all the instructional aides, they'll go in, and these are administered one-on-one, these tests. And so they'll blitz in a certain building, and they'll say to me, would you wait to come to our school after the blitz is done and V's done the analysis so that we have the data? And you know what else our principals have reported? That this kind of data and this new standards-based report card that we're going to report out to you on is really equipping our teachers to have more data to talk to parents about.
Yeah.
And I would also think, Kristen, just, I would also reflect the developmentally appropriateness of that increase, so that you're measuring them, right, when they start in first grade.
Got
and
it. Thank
You're
you.
meeting them where they are, and then you're moving them along, and so you would hope that by the time you're moving to that spring, that they sort of caught up, some of them developmentally, and you're going to see that. That would be my interpretation. I think that she's right, that the support is actually making
Right.
that difference happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Ms. Sheehan and then Ms. Varela.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to add that this is, you know, this is good news when we look at this, but they're meeting a benchmark. So the benchmark is the expectation by the end of first grade. The other point that I would just like to make is that when we look at the data and we have our meetings with the data teams and the individual schools, we also ask the coordinators to discuss with the grade level teams the percentage of students who have already met the benchmark or have exceeded. So the teachers have to think about what they're doing
Right.
for those students in the classroom who've already met the benchmark. They need to be challenged and met at their level.
Ms. Varela.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, that's great information. I was just going to ask Assistant Superintendent Sheehan and Superintendent Gormley too, that to piggyback on what Ms. Eberhardt said, that, you know, where a student, you know, with taking all the data and the intel and applying it, and, you know, so many of even my own kids' teachers will say where a student is January 1st and where they are, you know, June 16th, it's, you know, leaps and bounds, you know, happen along that journey because you've spent 3 months assessing, knowing, and then they really kind of, as you want to say, Mary, blitz, but really, you know, dig in, and this seems to be kind of reflective of what really can happen in those, you know, last 5 months.
So I'll go on to grade 2. And the data is pretty much set up the same way. So you see in the fall, around 18% of students in the 4 schools, so our elementary students, are in the red, 7% in yellow. And by springtime, you see a decrease in the red. So now it's down to 10%. And this is probability 4%. So you see that there is movement, as there should be, across a school year. And now.
So V, on that one,
Yeah,
go back
sure.
to that, please. Again, if you compare the fall fiction and the spring fiction, it does look like Collicott and Cunningham made some significant improvements. It looks like Glover and Tucker stayed just about where they were.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ms. Sheehan?
Well, I'd just like to note that an analysis of that data would, the team might take a look again at the individual students. Who are they? Have they been referred, so those students who are not making the progress, not meeting the benchmarks, have they been referred to the student support team for a, have they gone through what we call the pre-referral process, which means that under general education, they should be provided with interventions.
Yeah.
And if those interventions aren't successful, then maybe a referral for an evaluation. So that's the kind of analysis that would be made and discussed.
Makes sense.
Now
Just to be clear,
sometimes-
isn't that the process that's going on throughout the year?
It should be, yes.
Okay.
But when we go in, we're almost like a final check. All right, let's go over who those 9 and 12 children are. Tell me who they are. Tell me, did they just join the system? Are they the same children? Is the work becoming harder and somebody's moving from advanced, above benchmark to benchmark? So it's actually going over who each child is. And are they in the reading? You know, if you're receiving special services, special ed services, you're not in the reading group. And so it's really looking at every single child. Do you have the services in this school to provide for the children's needs in this building?
And your meetings are monthly or quarterly?
Probably every 2 months.
And just
Yes,
one
Sheena.
more point, too. If we see patterns, we will talk about instructional practices, because we have to take that into consideration when we look at the data. If children are not progressing.
Right.
Thanks. JP?
All right. So next I want to look at the first grade French immersion result. And this, we only have the end of year data here because at the beginning of the year, none of the students speak any word of French in the classroom. So they're really just trying to learn the routine, get acclimated to a new language. So we don't really get a true measurement until the end of the year. And this is what this looks like for our first grade French students. I think this looks very similar to the first grade on the English side as well. So 7%, 39, 54. So the English, the students on the English side are doing a little bit better. And that is understandable because French is a completely new language. So when you go to grade 2 for the French immersion program, you see that there's the beginning of the year in the fall, 17% of students who are a little bit below benchmark, 8% who are two levels or more below. And by the end of second grade, we only have 3% who are below. And probably another 3% who are in the yellow right here. So a lot of gains in the second grade French program. And then for the third grade, they all take the FNP, because this is when they do the 50% French and 50% English. So everybody takes the English exam, the FNP. And here are the results. this is for Milton Public School District. And the one thing here is you don't see a lot of difference between fall and spring level, and this is something that we want to talk about more and explore.
Ms. Eberhard?
So this is all third graders French and English.
Right.
Do you, as a district, distinguish those children who started reading English from the ones who have been reading English for 2 years and look at, so you're saying that it translates, that you're looking at the two varying programs and you're seeing that the children who were reading in primarily French, how are you measuring that, just making sure that they're staying on target? This is all the students, right?
Yeah, this is
Right,
all
so,
the students.
but you must have somewhere internally data that separates them out by, okay, thank you.
So even for our French correct me if I'm wrong, but even for our French immersion students, by third grade, they're still expected to perform academically at the same level as our English Innovation Program students, because they all take the grade 3 part, you know, and the Common Core standards that are taught to English, the innovation pathway students are taught in French as well. So they should be learning the same material, same content, and a lot of the reading skills are transferable.
Right, but so, you know, the thought being that if you had an unidentified need in the first and second grade, not determining whether it was the language you were learning or the learning that you had,
Right.
that's crucial in the third grade for students. And in that special ed report, that was the thing that was targeted.
Yeah.
And the idea that you're supporting, that how you're managing that piece is crucial. And so that was where that came from me. Just the concept that, yes, you're absolutely right, that's the way it should translate, and that's the way you hope it translates, but you're making sure that you're catching that piece that might not be.
So this is the third grade MCAS PARCC results. That's gonna kind of cap up our early literacy part right here. So if you look across the district, all students, all third grader, this is how they perform for the past 4 years of the data that we have. So about 70% of our students are scoring proficient or advanced on the MCAS. Or as in the case for 2015, this is a PARCC test. And then here you see the breakdown by the different subgroups and what their percentage of advanced or proficient was in all these 4 years.
We're lost
Yeah,
over
I'm
here.
sorry.
What page you're
Yeah.
on.
I don't think we have it.
Is this the new page?
Oh, this is the new slide. I'm sorry.
We're looking at.
I
Wait a
threw
minute,
this
is
in.
not
Seriously,
32.
looking like,
We have to go back?
We're like a bunch of leading dogs.
I threw this in at the end because I thought
It was a test
it really
score.
ties up
Okay.
this part about early literacy and hoping to give us a jumping off point to talk about pre-K and the importance of pre-K as well.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but I will make sure that it is available in your follow-up
As long as you
presentation.
can understand it and read it, that's okay.
So if you direct your attention up here, this is what I'm talking about. So for the past 4 years, our percentage of proficient and advanced students in the third grade are around 70%. So 71, 71, 69, and 69 for the 14-15 school year. And then what I did was I looked at the subgroups as well to see what their performance level were. So for African American Black subgroup, you know, they are really percentage of proficient or advanced is below 50%. The good news is, you know, between 14 and 15, I think that was the implementation year for one of the advancement initiative, we see an increase, 40 to 45%. So the advancement initiative is having some impact on the subgroup here, on African American Blacks, third grader. And then if you look at the low income or economically, so prior to 2015, these are all low income. And then in 2015, the state switched to economically disadvantaged. So you see the number, it's smaller, but it's not a huge gap, 37 to 31. And you see also that their percentage of proficient or advanced is also below 50%. But there is a bump between 2014 and 2015. So going from 38% to 42%, which is great. Incremental progress, but progress nonetheless. And then for our students with disability, their numbers have kind of stayed the same at 24%. And then for our ELL and former students, we don't have results for them because their numbers are less than 10, so the states don't provide the results.
Dr. Craighead?
For students with disabilities, is that physical disabilities as well as learning disability, or it's all?
I think it's all.
Okay.
So as you can see, there's definitely an achievement gap between our subgroups and our non-subgroup.
So V, I want,
No, go ahead.
Ms. Bagley Jones, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
So I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples here. So in 2012 through 2014, we had MCAS.
Right.
2015, we had MCAS and PARC.
In 2015, this is PARC,
Just PARC?
just PARC.
And are we certain that advanced and proficient on MCAS is comparable to advanced and proficient on PARC? I thought they were supposed to be measuring different skills.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly equivalent, so you can't say advanced on MCAS is like level 5, but the state has designated, they have made sure to calibrate both the MCAS and the PARC so that the percentage of achievement in proficient or advanced on the MCAS is parallel to what you would get on the PARC. So that level 4 and 5 on the PARC are the above, so level 4 is at benchmark, or level 4 is meeting expectation, and level 5 is above expectation. So it's not exactly equivalent, but it's similar enough.
And now, next year,
Yeah.
our students took PARC, and then next year, our students will take a completely different exam.
MCAS 2.0.
Yeah,
right?
can I ask, V, if you want to speak to it, or superintendent, so where is the state on content 2.0? Is that what's called, content 2?
MCAS 2.0.
Yeah, that's a work thing, we have content 2.0 work, so MCAS 2.0. I wanted to ask, like, where are they on that? Like, will it be ready to, will it still be given in the timetable of that March timetable? Where is it ready? I mean, it seems the decision was made rather quickly to kind of do a hodgepodge from what it seems like it will be for that, to pull it all together, where it seemed like it took a very long time for the PARC to fully come together and then administer. So can anyone speak to that?
B?
Well, as far as I can tell from the commissioner's email messages and communication, they're on schedule to start the new test next year in 16-17. So.
It's my other question. So
Yeah.
will they
So,
be?
and tomorrow, the irony, the commission is having a telephone conference with all the superintendents. B will join me tomorrow at 1 o'clock to talk to just this. But I want to tell you, they've already put out, we could barely get the calendar set, and they've already told us the testing windows for next year.
And so English is ready, math is ready, and will it be distributed online as the PARC will be, or will it be
Yes.
back to, really?
And science will stay MCAS.
MCAS.
So it's very important for people to understand that all of the districts in the state moved at different rates. And so we went into PARC, we were able, because of the MFE and the Copelands, to complete our infrastructure. So I went to meetings, and superintendents, even if you had the hardware, you didn't have the infrastructure. So we went into PARC. So you have the achievement data, but then you also have teaching the children the skills using the technology. You know, I know there are school districts that trucks came up with truckloads of Chromebooks the day before the children took the test. But we had the hardware in place, the students were using it, the teachers were trained about the drop-downs on the park. And so we moved ahead. It's important for the viewing public to know, we moved ahead with park. So this is last year was our second year with fully implementing park. But MCAS science stayed at grades 5, 8, and 9 or 10, taking MCAS, paper and pencil.
That's right.
And MCAS is still at Milton, at high school. They didn't go to park. We gave extensive pilots working with the state, but you still take the paper and pencil MCAS in English and math.
So
Ms.
my
Bagley
question was, thank you, my question was, it's hard to, but looking at Glenn's thing, that a lot of the categories or a lot of the clumps, you know, white, low income, blah, 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 are all sort of, not stable, but in the same district. But when I look at African American Black, you know, you see almost 50%, then a big dip, then it's slowly climbing up. I don't remember the year we first had academic achievement money, advancement. Was it third, was it?
It was 13, 14 is the first year of implementation.
Okay.
So it
I
was
mean, that
this
just
year.
sort of is concerning that there was such a big dip, even though it's good news, it's going up. But that's not.
But those are
Well,
the
the-
years advancements.
The dip was
started to
before
go.
the
Yeah, right before that,
implementation
right.
year.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I just have one more question on the MCAT 2.0, or the, so do you know, this will be implemented this year digitally, and for the most part, do you think it will stay at least for, I mean, I'm saying this as a school committee member and as a parent. Kids are not liking, you know, we did Park Online, and now we got to switch this. I mean, they're like disgruntled employees at a company that said, we worked really hard to implement this new best practice process, and now the whole thing's gone to hell in a handbasket and something new has to go in. I mean, I know it's the commissioner and it is what it is, but I don't think the student body, as being a parent of a middle schooler and a high schooler, like the fact that it's going to change it again. I mean, I don't know if V or, I mean, or maybe Mary, if you can speak to this, maybe after this conference call, would any superintendents bring that up or bring that, I'm sure he must be aware of it. I'm sure he's got many parents writing to him about it, but.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I think I said to Dr. Craighead that, in discussing this, that the commissioner has responded in the amount of time that students over the last 2 years have been taking these exams. And the time, correct V, has been reduced.
Yes.
And so that's huge. But I will report out to you after this conference call tomorrow on where we're going. But that's valuable data from the students.
I mean, it is, believe me, it's not just Milton, I mean, even, you know, people I know in other towns. It's just, I think it's just too much change. The kids, I mean, some kids like high stakes testings, but most don't, and I just feel that they've worked to, I mean, they took MCATs when they were younger, and I think they, you know, got used to it, and then they had this big change to Park, and now it's only been implemented 2 years, and now they have a change again. I mean, I just think, so, okay, I'd be interested to see if that's brought up. Thank you.
I mean, and that kind of put an asterisk point on the data for the 2 intervening years too, because once we have MCAS 2.0, I'm not sure what the grading scale will be or how they'll correlate it to the past MCAS results that we've had in the past decade or more. I mean, those are all questions that are unanswered. So we're charting new territory here.
Right, I think we've moved on to future problem solving. But Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, this is fabulous, but I know I'm sort of losing my eyesight, you know, looking at all this, and I just want to make sure we get to,
Get through this.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. Okay, with that, V?
I'll try to go faster.
Please move on.
No, it's just,
Okay, so looking at that third grade data, we see that there are a lot of achievement gaps still. And we started reading more about the pre-K and the importance of high-quality pre-K program through our partnership and collaboration with Dr. Noni Lasso. So we went to an institute that she did that really talks about the importance of early literacy, not just for first grade through third grade, but also before that, in the 0 through 5 age range is really where a lot of your foundational development is happening. And if you're not getting the kids there, high quality literacy experience, verbal experiences with caring adults, their potential for development is that much reduced. So we started thinking about pre-K programming, and so this school year, in school year 15-16, the Milton Public School opened its first full-day pre-K program at the Tucker School, where a lot of our students are experiencing the achievement gap. And we're hoping that, starting this program, it'll help to reduce that gap in future years for some of these students. So we've been using an assessment that is used really statewide as part of the Massachusetts Kindergarten Entry Assessment Initiative. So a lot of daycares and preschool programs use this assessment to make sure that their 3-year-old, their 4-year-old are really on track developmentally and ready for school. So they're not, so this assessment is really looking at what students already do in the course of their daily interaction with teacher. It's not asking 3- and 4-year-old to sit down and take a test or anything like that. So you're observing what students are already doing with their peers, and then you're giving them a rating based on what you observe. So this is the tool that we started using in the district this year for our pre-K program. And the good thing about TS Goal is it's nationally normed, so there is a norm for what they call it widely held expectation, but that's the benchmark for appropriately developmental milestones at certain age level. So so we use it for 2 domains, social emotional and cognitive, and that's what districts in the states and child care centers are using as well when we're talking about 3- and 4-year-old. So this is a preview of our data in the fall. So this first column here is an aggregate of the Milton Public School pre-K programs. So 16% of our children are exceeding the benchmark for the fall. 58% are meeting the benchmark, and 26% of our students are falling below benchmark. So when you carry this over to the spring administration, you see that the number of children in this red box has reduced down to 5%, which is great news.
That's amazing.
And I'm going to move on to the cognitive domain. And here you kind of see the same story, similar story. 28% of our students are below expectation. And by the springtime, after a year of pre-K, that number is down to 7%, 9 students. And if you look at the social, emotional, and cognitive, you see that social, emotional in the springtime, you have higher percentage of our students exceeding expectation. So in the blue, in cognitive, less so, but 75%, 74% of our students are right on target. So that's great. And especially if you look at the data at the Tucker School, where 34% of students are coming in not meeting expectation at all. By the end of, by springtime, that number has been reduced down to 8%. And I think that's a really great news story for our community here, for the Tucker School, and for the potential of these students as they move through our school system as well.
Yes, Eberhard?
I just have a really quick question. So when you look at the makeup of the different preschool programs, the Tucker Elementary program is a full-day program? The Collicott is...
It has a full-day program, and then it has 2 half-day programs, so an AM and a PM
Right,
as well.
and then when you're talking about the Milton High School program, are you talking about the program that is the one that the high school students are involved with?
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's that whole factor of how many adults and how many interactions children are having with adults. And so at the high school, you're having more interactions with, high school students, but still helping children to grow socially and emotionally and cognitively at that age is key. So it's interesting to sort of see that you have a different measure, but that's a significantly different measure. It's curious, for me, that's what early childhood is I don't want to say thing, but it's my thing.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting observation. TS Gold is a great tool. And there's a lot of great
I
training.
want to ask a question. At the
Yeah.
Collycott, the TS Gold is given to the children with special needs, to Dr. Craig's point, and the role models.
Not in the
What is it?
sub-separate classes.
Yeah,
They're-
not in the
I don't
sub-separate.
believe they're using it in the sub-separate classes yet, but they are in the integrated classes, so they do have,
So
about
4
half
of
of
the
the
5.
children on IEPs.
Right. That's great.
So
Yeah.
4 of the 5 classes at the Collycott would give TS Gold to
So we
everyone.
should flag these children. It'd be great to have some system to, like you have for French immersion, and I'm sure you've already thought about this, to flag them, to flag the record over time, to see how, as they start in our pre-K program and move through the system, the differences that makes across their learning domains. It would be particularly interesting, since it's brand new, to do it, and see what it looks like in 5 years.
The other thing I'd like to see is, so there are 3 populations that create the total sample. I'd like for you to take all of the populations in each school that were consistent throughout the year, because the numbers vary a little bit. For example, in the spring, the Collycott's 67, in the fall, it's 54. So look to see where there are common cohorts in each season and see what it does to the numbers. Then you could look at the same students in all 3 seasons. And I think it varies a little bit, but I'd like to see what that performance looks like.
And that number changes, Mr. Walker, you know this, but the viewing public doesn't, because this preschool, as children come of age at
Right.
3 o'clock. What time?
Right.
3 o'clock. I'm late.
Or 9 o'clock.
At 3 years of age,
Right.
they enter into the program all through
Right.
the year.
Right.
Is it a 3-year-old cutoff? Not 2.9, but 3?
3.9, but they come
All right. Just
For you early
those
childhood
points
people,
make
the
a
rest
huge
of us,
difference,
it's 3.
actually.
For you, it's 2.9.
We can't take them till they're 3.
Okay, that's what I was curious.
They
A lot of
begin-
schools don't, right?
They can be tested at 2.9,
Right.
that's when
Okay.
they
But they
refer
come at 3.
They come at 3.
Yes.
That makes a difference, though. Those months make a difference.
Okay, so I'm gonna walk quickly through the MCAS and PARC data. So before we go, I just wanted to talk a little bit about CPI, the Composite Performance Index, because this is what the state uses to, in its accountability measure for all school systems. And the reason they do this is to norm all the percentage of students in varying categories, so in advanced, proficient, needs improvement, warning, just so that they can see if there's an increase in performance. So the CPIs measure the aggregate performance of a group and allows us to compare it to other group of students. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the CPI calculation. So if you are a student in proficient or advanced, you get 100 CPI point. And then high needs improvement, you get 75, low needs improvement, 50, and so forth. And just playing out a couple of different scenarios, you can kind of see that, there are different ways of getting to a CPI number, so you really need to pay attention to students that you have in your proficient or advanced category, as well as how the students are distributed among these other categories. So for example, taking a look at this calculation 2, where we have 60% out of 100 students, so 60 students are in proficient or advanced. And then we have none in the needs improvement, and then we have 40 in low warning. You have their CPI as being 62.5, which, on its surface, if you just look at this number alone, it's very close to this number, or close to this number as well, 70, you know. But if you look at the breakdown of this calculation only has 20 students who are advanced and proficient. And then the rest are in needs improvement, high needs improvement, and low needs improvement. So this gives you kind of a spread of where your students are, and that's what the CPI takes into account. Like not only the advanced or proficient, but also like where these other students are. So then let's look at the CPI over time for science. And as you can see, 2014, we said that this was the year that the advancement money kicked in. And so in 2015, you kind of see the results of that. The CPI are improving for most of our grade level. And then in ELA, so that was science that we just looked at. And this is ELA. And the CPI in ELA is really high. It's in the 90s, so all through 4 years, the CPI is in the 90 to 100 range. Whereas in science, the range is more like 75 to 95. So what this can tell you is that English scores tend to be better in this district. And then you look at the math scores. And again, the trend over time remains in the range of about 85 to 95. So that's a pretty tight range too. And of course, we're going to have fluctuation with the data because you're going to have different cohorts of students and all these other factors. But what's important is looking over time, you want to make sure that the trend stays within a certain range because that tells you that your curriculum, your policy, your structure are solid enough to support similar performance year after year after year. So that's what that means.
So V, on these, I'd like to see the same format that you used on science for math and ELA. On science, you showed the 4 elementary schools, and then on math and ELA, you didn't.
So the science, they only take the tests in grade 5, 8, and 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in ELA and math, they're taking those in grade 3, 5.
Yep. So 3, 4,
I mean, there's a
5,
lot. There's
6.
a lot of data for ELA. There's even more data for ELA, I think, for each of the elementary schools, right?
For each of the elementary school.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For ELA, yeah, because here I collapse it down to just a district ELA number.
I don't find that helpful. I'd like to see the individual elementary school performance.
So we can add that as an appendix. And then this slide really gives you the comparison of percent proficient and above as compared to the state. And what you really see is, we're leading the state in every category, in every year.
All right, so this is the point which in every presentation I say, I'm not really that interested in comparing
did I tell
ourselves to
you,
the
Lee?
state. I'm interested in comparing ourselves to other Milton students. So how are our students doing in each of the schools? And we want to get everyone up to advanced and proficient. That's the ultimate goal. But
Sure.
we consistently exceed what's happening in the state because we're Milton. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a fabulous school district. So that, for me, that's not a useful comparison.
So I can follow up with that slide with each different elementary school.
I mean, I do think that, I hear your point, and I agree that it is helpful to really see it by the school, and the other ones that were by the grade, like science went down, some grades went up in other grades.
Yeah.
I think that that's data for you all to be working on, but it is helpful. I mean, why do you include the state data? From your point of view, not from our point of view.
from my point of view,
Yeah.
because the state data provide a benchmark for you to kind of gauge where you are. I mean, that the state gives you an average that is the same average for any district that you're in across the
So
state.
we might want the state to stay in there, but to have, as Mr. Walker said, to have the individual schools
Right.
to compare. That
'Cause
would be
that-
good to
yeah.
look at.
To piggyback, because I'll
Right, so-
echo that. I mean, I know it's more intensive a breakdown for you, but it is very helpful to see, well, how each one is doing, and, and then that piggybacks on all the earlier breakdown you did of,
You were trying to save pages, I know.
I know that, but,
Right.
how many, economically disadvantaged students, it all kind of helps to see a bigger, broader picture of where the improvements need to be made.
So the place where I find the state comparison helpful is with SAT scores, AP performance. Here, we have a high-performing school district. I mean, not that many years ago, we had all level 1 schools. Now we have 2 level 1s and other level 2 schools. So therefore, we're going to be outperforming the state average, I think. But, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have the data, but I'm also saying that the comparisons, I think the right comparisons are, how are we doing within the district? And arguably, we could look at other districts that we think are comparable. That might be an interesting comparison.
Well,
Yeah, so that's the next
Next
slide.
slide. But I think Ms. Sheehan had a question.
No, I was
or
just going
comment.
to make a point as to how we look at, when we do an analysis, let's say at the school-based level, when we're looking at the data, we will ask the data teams to look at how the state performed, because because we have the expectation that we should well exceed that number at the state
Right,
level.
right.
If we're close to that number at the state, then we want to know
Right.
why.
Right.
So that's a good,
Right.
it's
Right.
good to
Yes.
gauge.
That-
Why is that so low?
I absolutely agree with that. That's,
Yeah.
Yep.
okay,
So,
district,
Speaking about
other
other
districts.
districts, yeah. So this is taking the CPI comparison of just the 2015 results for different tests, and you can kind of compare it across these different districts. And the highlighted districts are the ones that have a similar breakdown of population to us. So that's Burlington, Canton, and Wellesley. So across the board, you can see that, well, which one would you like to compare us to?
Well, I think we can look at
All
all
of
of
them?
them, right?
Okay.
I don't think you need to go through that. It's kind of speaks for itself. but-
Yeah.
So when we look at this data, we can all have different perspectives. And as Chairman Walker and V said, the state, we can compare ourselves to other districts. We can compare ourselves within the district with the 4 elementaries. And to Ms. Farrella's point about high-stakes testing, my message is to principals and teachers. I call it my directionality. As long as we're to the advancement initiative, improving, looking at the cohorts. So when I look at these charts, when these charts come in, I follow cohorts. Again, I look across and I want to make sure that the 3rd grades are making progress. But I want to follow those 3rd grades to the 4th grade and see that the number of children in advanced and proficient or above grade level is increasing.
Right.
And so, again, there are, to V's point, I think the phrase is 100 ways to cut the data. You're one way, Dr. Craig is another way, Dr. Pavlicek is another way. Again, to take the pressure off, you're teaching every day, you're teaching every hour of every day, you're being evaluated as teachers to the teachers and the students. If we're improving, we're always looking at the data to improve the achievement, to improve the instruction of our teachers, to give them more content through professional development, to improve their content, to improve their instructional skills, and for our students to achieve. And so somebody came to me and said, what do you care about high-stakes testing? I think that this 3rd grade test is the foundation of the child taking the bar or the medical exam or their SATs or their APs. So we want every Milton Public School student to be able to compete with every child, every student across the state and across the district. But you don't want to make it that they wear these test results. You know, again, take the test, give it the best of your ability, and then we'll give you the skills. We'll identify you, and through the advancement initiative created by this school committee, we'll give you the supports, the curriculum. One quick story, and I promise I'll stop. When we identified the advancement initiatives, Dr. Karen Spalding said, in science, we had issues. We gave the teachers the curriculum. Your child didn't have to wait 5 years. We bought all of the curriculum materials. We gave the teachers the professional development, and the results that we saw in science scores just proved that we have talented teachers and we have students who come ready to learn. So there are a million, that's why the virtue of V. V has put this data, and any way that you want it, we'll produce it. And you have asked for very creative ways that we then share with the staff.
Okay, so in interest of time, I will move on. So this is looking at PSAT, SAT, and AP data. Number of test takers. You see that the blue bar right here is the AP, and it dipped in 13-14, but it's back up again in 14-15. And if we look at it as a percentage, you see that all graduating seniors who are taking the SAT are taking them at about 90% of graduating senior, 91% of graduating seniors are taking the SAT. We have 59% of our students, of all our juniors and seniors, are taking AP classes, and AP classes are open to all junior and senior enrollment. So a very high percentage of our sophomores and our juniors are taking the PSAT.
And that percentage is because we give it during the school day. So the message is SATs are important, PSATs are taken during the school days. And it was a school committee member who said to me, why am I dropping off my child and seeing only those children who are able to pay taking the PSATs on Saturday mornings? And that's the day we began to give the PSATs in school. And the message, the 91% SATs, is a direct correlation to this must be important. Everybody takes the PSATs.
Okay, so this is looking at, this is minority test takers, students who self-reported as a minority students on these various tests. So as you can see, 43% of students who took the SAT self-reported as being a minority, and the population of minority students at the high school is 38%. So looking across, we see that we're hitting the target, the bar here with most of these tests, and there's a gap here with the AP. And this is the PSAT average scores for the sophomore class who took the PSAT in 14-15. You can kind of see through the years, it kind of stabilizes around 45. And as juniors who took the PSAT, their average is a little bit higher. It clusters around 50. And the PSAT has kind of a correlation to what your SAT performance will be. So then we look at the average SAT scores in critical reading, math, and writing, and you see that they're around 500, 526, 537, 517, which is what these scores are kind of predicting that the SAT performance will be. So if we want to improve the SAT average scores, improve the performance, we have a chance to work on the PSAT here after we get the results to really think about ways of helping students achieve higher. And I think my last slide.
Two questions. What's a perfect SAT score these days?
It's different now.
Yeah, it's like
It's back to the
2,400.
800. They switched it now, so it's no longer 3 sections. You can take the writing section, but it's like when I was in high
Okay, the
school.
new SAT,
So it's 800, 800, and I don't know what they score the writing out of now.
The writing's out of 800.
Okay, so it's, you don't have to take the writing? but some schools require, so it's what, 2,400?
Yes,
Plus the rate.
Mhm.
Right. Like when we were taking them.
And do we do any prep courses?
Oh, yes. They offer them as actual courses during the day.
During the day?
During the day.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I know, because Timothy was in one.
All right, so this is my last slide. This is the percentage of exams with qualifying scores on the AP. And you see that there's been an increase over the years, 54, 66, 69, 74, and we're stabilizing at 73% for the 14-15 school year. But if you look at the numbers, it's actually 73% of a bigger number of students who took the exams. So I think that's it from me. I know that was long.
It was excellent.
It was over 2 hours. No, really, thank you. That was great data. Really appreciate it.
And I did take some notes, so I'll follow up with those questions that you have, and we'll give you a more comprehensive slide for your retreat.
Great. Thanks. I just have one more question. Can you go back to the test takers as percent of class slide? So if the PSATs are given during the day, does that mean that on that particular day, just 3% or 7% or 6% of the juniors were just out?
When we did our internal prep for this, that's what I asked.
Good, we're in sync. What's the answer?
But you would want to see that at
'Cause if it's-
100%.
Yeah, I would think it would be 100%.
Right,
if it's during the
that was a
day.
question that jumped out to me, too.
Okay, so more coming on that? Okay, thanks a lot. That was everything I expected and more. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
That was really good. You make the data really come alive.
Yeah.
Which is high praise for a non-data person.
No, it is, because it's something.
I know you like it, but I'm not a data person, and
Yeah.
I really like your
My
presentations.
fear was going through the end and everyone is zoning out. But you still ask questions till the very end, so thank you for
We were
that.
very good. They engaged. You did a great
I'll
job.
be very brief.
Okay, and now,
I'll
the
be
moment
very
we've been
brief.
waiting for, happenings.
I'll be very brief. This was sent to me, so excuse me for reading. Last year's readers participating in the Summer Reading Challenge read over 484,000 minutes. This year's goal from our librarians is to beat that record and read over 500,000 minutes. That's over 500,000, they capitalized that, minutes. As of August 8th, paired with the Milton Public Library, the Milton children have logged 451,000 minutes. So as they write, on your mark, get set, keep reading, and that message is to parents, to their children. In collaboration with the Milton Public Library and Early Childhood Alliance, we have been hosting sessions for summertime reading stories. The last session will be this coming Thursday, and I sent you a picture to the school committee members.
Long gone.
She could have read this to you because you saw her children front and center at the Tucker for the pairing of the Milton Public Library and the Milton Public Schools. And I have to tell you, Chairman Walker mentioned the feedback, but Marty McKenna, again, through the Advancement Initiative, the parent liaison, is everywhere in this Milton Public Schools, every day, all over town, and she's initiating these reading sessions for young children, and they are unbelievable. A sensitive reminder, but a reminder nonetheless, that the re-registration of all families rising from grades 5 to 6 and 8 to 9 must reestablish residency this second year that we've been doing this. Last year, we worked to 100%. Our person is, our registrar is here every day, but she also opens up on Tuesday nights from 4 to 8 in the Milton High School office. Glenn, do you remember the statistic today? How many families have re-registered?
No, we're well more than half, but we're not there yet.
And the feedback, some people are upset about it, but once we explain the reason for this, they come back very pleasant with all of their information. So I want to thank families and for doing this re-registration, and I worked with Chairman Walker and the CPAC For children who are in out-of-district placements, the same, rising 6 and 9. But all children who are in Blue Hills Regional or
Norfolk County.
Norfolk County, because the other day we found out a child had moved, and we would have never known without this process, so we alerted Glenn Pavlicek, who will now change your tax dollar allotment to Blue Hills Regional because one child has moved out of Milton. So this process is really valuable. Athletic signups, to the athletic data. Information regarding the fall sports and signups can be found on the front of the web page. Transportation, for those of you who have, this is a very sensitive happenings, these are really important issues. For those of you who signed up and paid for your transportation, bus passes were mailed out this week. If you have not registered for transportation and would like to do so, there are still seats available on every bus route. So you're to call or contact Jake Smith, our coordinator, at bus.miltonps.org or jsmith@miltonps.org. Dr. Elaine McNeil-Jamai asked me to bring this to your attention. You're already familiar with it, with the site council's presentation, that they're building a new playground at the Tucker School. You heard their site council, Chairman Walker, and Dr. Slaughter made a very generous donation that night. The Copelands made a matching grant. We had an anonymous donation, but they're still in need of $6,000. So if you look on the front of our webpage tomorrow morning, we will have the site that you can go to if you want to make a donation. A little side note, we want to applaud the efforts of students and families that are creatively working over the summer. Zaria Daly, a rising third grade student at the Tucker, recently raised $63 selling lemonade at Shields Park for the Tucker playground. We cleared it with her parents that we could mention her name and put her picture out. Back to school information, we receive calls daily. Students return grades 1 through 12 on Wednesday, August 31st, and pre-K and K students return on Tuesday, September 6th. I want to recognize just for one moment Cunningham Principal Jonathan Redden, a tremendous amount of assistance from several administrators, but Jonathan Redden has brought Milton Summer Enrichment to a new level. You have to see it to believe it. One day after it is in place and we're all out helping with the bus duty, they don't need us anymore, he broke the number of 700 in summer enrichment. I told Chairman Walker, I saw a parent drop off 5 preschool students and wave goodbye to them. They went to the high school, and so parents and guardians are really intelligent consumers. They know with the red shirts, the way that the children are cared for, brought to the appropriate classrooms. They change 4 times in the morning, and so that is a huge success. Member Varela asked about space at the last meeting. When we met with Chairman Walker, we have an appointment next week, Dr. Pavlicek and I, and any school committee member who wants to join us, I'll put the date out. We have NESDEC coming in, and they're looking at 25 years worth of data, and we've always done it via email, but they're going to come in to do, I think, a more serious dive into our enrollment data and our projections. Adult Ed. Very briefly, Adult Ed, Stephanie Nephew and Dr. Nick Fitzgerald ran the Adult Ed. It's been taken over by Sarah Warner from the Tucker School and Nick Fitzgerald, so you should look. They're not going to be mailing. They're going to be going online with that, and we'll do a lot of publicity because people who don't have children in the district are the ones that avail themselves of the Adult Ed program, and we're looking for some unbelievable programming coming into that program. And we talked about the advanced placement. We were notified within the last 2 weeks, an AP Scholar with honors, an AP Scholar with distinction, and national AP Scholars. And so those names, I'm not going to read them tonight. Included in that list is our own Margaret Eberhard's son. So I'd ask people to go to the email blast and recognize those students for their achievement. And as I said, that achievement it's a perfect finish. That achievement starts at the preschool level. Ms. Superintendent Gormley said to her own nephew, you don't wake up on the morning in the 11th grade and decide you're going to take an AP class. That culture starts when you're in preschool and kindergarten. So I appreciate your indulgence. Thank you.
Quick question from Ms.
Yeah.
Gormley.
My nephew, what AP you took?
Charlene's been really good about mailing us out, emailing us out, I can't talk.
Agenda, yeah.
Committee meetings and things. Can she also email out us, I cannot speak right now, the agendas for the subcommittees? When she sends us out the dates?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay, all right, sorry, I'm tired. It's only 9:15.
Okay, update on town school consolidation initiatives. That committee hasn't been meeting, but our representative is going to be Dr. Craighead. Dr. Craighead, I talked with Anne Marie Fagan, our town administrator, and told her that you'd be giving her a call to talk about fall scheduling. She said they will probably start meeting again in September.
Okay,
So if you can give her a call, that would be great.
okay.
Any other updates?
You just saw the first instance of it, too. This is the first warrant report run under the new town software for accounts payable. So it looks a
Okay.
little different, but it is now, that part of it's now up and running. We're still running parallels on the new payroll system with the goal of going live on September 1st.
Great.
One more.
Yep.
October 4th, mark it in your calendars for the collaboration between the Milton Substance Abuse Committee, the Health and Wellness Committee, the Milton Hospital, BID Hospital. Who am I leaving out? There's like 12 people, 12 organizations that are collaborating on this wonderful event called,
Hidden in plain sight.
no, that's just one of the, we're having a fair with exhibits, that's one of the exhibits. It's parenting your kids in risky times. And it's a wonderful collaboration, and we all will be there. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a very good, no, it is a good title. Very,
So
I think it
October
would draw 'em
4th.
out.
And nothing else is going to be scheduled in the district on October
promise.
4th? Okay, thank you. That's all.
Won't be a concert
No
or
concerts, nothing.
presidential speaker or anything like that, right? Okay.
Finance Subcommittee, approval of vendor warrants. Dr. Pavlicek.
We have one warrant. It's warrant number 6, dated August 1st, and it is for $137,864.19.
Is there someone who's moved it, who signed that would like to move it?
Move approval.
Yep, I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Bagley Jones, seconded by Ms. Varela. Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Abstained? 401. Walker abstaining.
Just as a note, even though we have no meeting next week, there will be another warrant next week, so you'll be getting an email looking for 4 signatures early in the week. Because, as I said, this is the first warrant of the new process, so it's a little limited in size. We want to make sure it all worked. Next week's will be bigger, I promise.
Okay, move to approve the April 13th, 2016, the May 11th, 2016, and the open public hearing, May 11th, 2016 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Walker, seconded by Bagley Jones.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
All in favor? It's unanimous. No old business, next meeting agenda items.
When is our
I have
next
lots of
meeting?
policies.
24th.
22nd for the retreat, 24th for the...
For probably October, Ms. Gormley, I'd like to do an update on progress on the special education program review recommendations. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Varela, needs a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, second.
Seconded by Ms. Bagley Jones. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.